Good afternoon. I hope you're having a lovely day so far. Thank you for taking the time to join us. You've been invited to join this session so that we have an opportunity, that's myself, Helen Brown, and my colleague, Curriculum Manager, Elaine Day, to update you and give you some extra information to prepare our students, which are, your next of kin, ready for our GCSE summer exam series. So this information is all about our exams coming up for the summer. So what we'd like to talk about is the actual build up to the delivery on the day, so that both you and your next of kin are aware, our students know what's going to happen on the day. To give you some information about the exam board strategy, so we are in an exam year this year, but it's still not quite exactly the same as traditional exam years pre the COVID pandemic. So we'll be talking about what the exam board have done to mitigate the post-pandemic disruption. We're going to share with you lots of different revision tips that you can use and you can encourage your next of kin to use, and also any questions that you have at the end, please feel free to ask us and then we will do our very best to answer them. So one of the critical things, and that's the exam dates. So your student or our students, your children should already know when the exams are taking place. We've also communicated these out with you, but here to make them really clear, we've got the first exam that's starting at 9 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, the 18th of May, and that's our English paper 1. English paper 2 is then on Friday, the 10th of June. So you'll see there's quite a big gap in between, and we've got a half-term holiday in that time frame as well. For students that are either just doing maths or doing maths as well, then their maths paper 1 will start on Friday the 20th of May. Again, it's a 9 AM start. All of the GCSEs for maths and English are 9 AM starts this year. Maths paper 2 is on Tuesday the 7th of June at 9 o'clock, and then maths paper 3 is on Monday the 13th of June at 9 AM. So if you want to take a photograph of those dates, then please do, but you'll also be able to go back and rewatch this presentation so you can capture the dates then if you need to. So preparing for the delivery. So this is a huge undertaking for us as a college. So we pride ourselves on being a very effective resit programme for the GCSEs. But for many of our students, this will be the first time that they're taking real GCSE exams because of the previous teacher assessed grades and the centre assessed grades. So we've got over 600 students that will be taking their GCSE English and their maths exams at both our Abingdon campus and also at our Witney campus. So we've got a total of 390 students that are 16 to 18. The other students are made up from our adult provision, so that's our 19 plus students, and also we have provision through the Army, and we have better training that come and sit their exam with us as well. So it will be our 16 to 18 study programmes, our adult learners, and also some of our students from the military. So the mock exams are designed to be a run through. So we did that prior to the exam. So before Easter, we had our mock exams, and that gave the students an opportunity of knowing what happens on the day, where they go, having an experience of if they're sitting their exam in the sports hall or if they're going into a smaller classroom. And some students with other access arrangements might be in a room with an invigilator by themselves. So it gave students an opportunity to experience that, and it also gave us an opportunity, after missing the last 2 years of actual exams, to iron out any issues before the main exam series. So we're now confident that we're well prepared for our summer exams starting. So I just mentioned the word access arrangements, and this is something that students that are entitled to access arrangements that have already been identified, we make sure that we provide those access arrangements. So you should have already received a letter which will detail to you any access arrangements that have been put in place for the final exams. So these letters have been sent via Microsoft Teams, and they've also been sent to the students, not just on their own Teams, but on their college email address. So as a next of kin, if you haven't yet seen a letter about access arrangements, then please ask your son or daughter to have a look so you know what's been put in place for them. A final letter gets sent out before the final exam. So if you're aware that your child didn't actually receive the correct access arrangements in the mocks and you haven't yet still had a letter, it means we still don't know about it. So if you could please contact Elaine and put your email address in, well, this is Elaine's email address, which we'll put into the chat function as well. So if you haven't received a letter and your son or your daughter hasn't received a letter and you really believe that they should have access arrangements in place, please can you contact us as soon as possible. So on the morning of the exams, we trialled this through the mocks and we're going to continue with this through the summer exam series, and that's breakfast. So lots of our teenagers come to college and they haven't yet had breakfast because it's too early for them to eat, or they felt like they had some nerves, or they might have been worrying about getting to the college in time. So what we do is we offer a free breakfast for all of our students that are sitting their exams, and then once they arrive at college, they can have their breakfast from 8 o'clock. So it's a really important part of our exam process, and it's important to like sort of hydrate and also to like feed our brain ready for the exams. So as we recognise it is important, we've got a range of like toast, tea, coffee, fruit juices. We have cereal bars for students who might want to just like grab a cereal bar and go as well. But they can access their breakfast in the courthouse building on the Witney campus, and in Abingdon campus they can go into the main refectory area and they'll see friendly faces. There'll be the staff there that they're used to seeing. They can help themselves to whatever they would like, fill up their water bottle and just be ready, fed and hydrated, ready for to go into their exam. So equipment. So for English, all the students will need to bring a black pen and also some highlighters. So it's good if they've got one or two. Students will be well practiced at highlighting text in their preparation for their actual exams. So if you can just check with them the night before to make sure they've got a black pen and they've got some highlighters. For maths, they need a little bit more, so they'll still need a black pen, but in addition, also a pencil sharpener, a ruler, a rubber, protractor, compass, and then for paper 2 and paper 3, a scientific calculator. So we encourage students to bring their maths kit and their maths sets with them. But if on the day, for any reason that they've forgotten, then we do have some equipment packs that they will be able to borrow. So if they suddenly text you on the bus into college and they realise they've forgotten their maths equipment, it's not the end of the world. We don't have enough equipment sets for every student, but we do have some for some students that might have forgotten them. But again, if you can just encourage them the night before and just check they have all the equipment with them, then we would really appreciate that. And then once they've had their breakfast, we've got from breakfast to the actual exam. So it's normal practice. We did this during the mocks. When the students arrive, they'll be like met and greeted, and we'll be checking their name off so we know that they've signed in with us. We'll also be asking them to make sure they've got their ID badge. So we'll be checking their ID. If they've forgotten their ID badge, we've got time then to get them a temporary badge which has their student ID number on there. And then they'll also be given the location of their exam. So just to remind them whether they're going to the sports hall, whether they're going to a classroom, or whether they're going to an individual smaller room in line with their access arrangements. So we call the students for their exam rooms, and then once they're in, they'll leave their bags at the rear of the room. They'll settle down into their allocated desk area, and then the regulations are communicated by the invigilators to the students, and there are also clocks that are visible for the students to use, so that helps them to manage their time. So students need to actually stay for the first hour of the exam, and they can't leave within the final 15 minutes of the normal time. Students that have extra time as part of their access arrangements, they will manage this time themselves, and they can leave at any point after the normal time has finished. So they have additional time as part of their access arrangements, but if they don't choose to use all of that time, then they are able to leave. We would encourage them not to. We would encourage them to really use that extra time that they've been allocated, because that can make all the difference between going across that grade 4 boundary and beyond. Whilst the students are in the exam, staff who invigilate will look after the students' well-being, and they will ensure that they have everything that they need to complete the exam successfully. So even if once a student gets into the room, they perhaps don't have a black pen or the black pen has stopped working, then the invigilators will ensure that they have some spare to be able to provide the students with that. Also, if they need to have a rest break, then they'll be accompanied. So their well-being and their general sort of like looking after them, the invigilators will do during the exam. So I'm now going to hand over to Elaine, and Elaine is going to explain a little bit more about the process of during the exam weeks.
Thanks, Helen. So we know that the exam board has pre-released some material to help us as lecturers support students. So in English, the exam board have informed us that paper 2 will have a 21st century autobiographical extract and a 19th century essay. So we can actually be focusing on those 2 extracts and what to expect in the exam. They've also released details for paper 2 question 5, and we know that students will be expected to write an article. In maths, they've released a substantial amount. They've provided formula sheets for students, but they've also provided pre-released topics for the exams. So the lecturers have got a list of topics that the students will have to revise for and will expect to see the questions coming up in the exam. And the lecturers have shared all this information with students. So although we don't get a lot for English, we get a little bit, and maths, it's definitely helping students to focus on their revision for those particular topics. Dates for revision sessions for English. In May half term, we traditionally do revision across the week. There are 2 bank holidays this time, Thursday and Friday are bank holidays. So in terms of revision, we're doing face-to-face revision on Tuesday the 31st of May in Abingdon. The rooms will be confirmed later and students will be told. And then on Wednesday the 1st, we're doing revision in Witney from 10 till 12. We are only focusing on paper 2 because, as Helen said earlier, paper 1 is before half term, so that paper will already have been sat, and we're doing revision in lessons at the moment. There will be online resources made available to all students who prefer to revise at home. So there will be lesson recordings of the various papers and questions for students to do at home. Maths is slightly different. The dates for the maths revision are Monday the 30th, face-to-face in Witney and in Abingdon, and then online as well. So the maths tutors, one will be in Witney, one in Abingdon and one online, and that's from 10 to 12 and 1 to 3. Again, the rooms will be confirmed with students. Same again on Tuesday, there'll be face-to-face in Witney, face-to-face in Abingdon, and then a tutor online between 10 and 12 and 1 and 3. And then Wednesday the 1st, it will be online only for students to connect with all the tutors to do some revision. And all of this information will be available to students during their lessons as well, so they know how to get online and where to go for the face-to-face sessions. Then in terms of tips for preparing and revising for the exams, we've encouraged students to make a revision plan that builds in rest, exercise and entertainment, as well as building in revision for both maths and English. It's really important for them to have a nice welcoming study space, somewhere where they can actually set up and be for the duration. And it's very important for them to vary their revision activities from making notes to creating posters, so they're really getting a rich wealth of different activities. We do encourage lots of practice exam questions, and we're happy to mark those exam questions. So any material that students are producing in terms of practicing exam questions, if they hand them to their lecturers, they will get feedback on those. We do advise to keep their phones and other distractions away, It's quite easy to slip into that. Phone goes off, then suddenly you're out of that revision mode and back into the real world. So it's quite nice to have those distractions away for that time. And nowadays you can take your revision everywhere. Dr. Frost works on mobile phones in maths, so they can be revising on Dr. Frost on their phone, on their tablets, on their computers. And again, like on the exam day, it's really important to have a good night's sleep. I know it's really difficult just before an exam, but to also eat properly, so fueling the brain by including favourite snacks and drinks, which I know my children used to love. And then top tips for revising for GCSE English. Reading is fundamental in terms of both papers. Questions 1 to 4 on both papers are reading comprehension. So reading a variety of texts is really important. I often say to students, if you buy one newspaper, a Sunday newspaper, one of those really thick ones, that creates enough revision for a month. So it's all about asking yourself, what is the text about, what is the purpose, and who it's aimed at. And you can do that with any newspaper. You can also read novels. I know we've got lots of readers amongst our English students, and reading is just brilliant for preparing for that exam. Again, completing some practice exam questions and then focusing on those questions which students find hardest. So leaving the ones where they're quite comfortable with, but focusing on the ones that they felt they needed to improve on. In one of the lesson revision PowerPoints, I've actually talked about how creating a couple of characters and a couple of settings for paper 1 question 5 is really important, and we certainly will be doing that in the lessons leading up to paper 1. And I've actually created a lesson recording which I will share with students. Researching how to write an article for that paper 2, and especially how to lay it out. So again, lecturers in English will be working on this with students throughout the next few weeks. Revising any structural devices for that paper 1 question 3. And most important of all is revising the timings for each question and knowing what each question will ask you. We're very fortunate in English. We only have 10 questions across paper 1 and paper 2. So revising those timings is important because time management in the exam is critical. In terms of maths, revising little and often is really the main advice because there is so much to revise and so much to remember, so it's important not to be overwhelmed. We're using Dr. Frost across all of our lessons, so there's revision tasks set by lecturers to revise. Again, the practicing past papers, especially those questions that students find difficult, and then attending those revision sessions to actually get that live support during those weeks before the exam. Taking effective notes or creating and using flashcards, creating posters and cheat sheets, and even creating a visual revision guide or reading your notes aloud. All of these work just as well for English as maths, but you can see there's lots of ways to revise and lots of platforms to revise from. And then finally, questions.
So this is an opportunity. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask us, there is a chat function. So if you want to, if there's anything that we haven't covered that you would like to know, then please, if you access that chat function and just type your question in, and then once they're received, Megan, who is controlling our chat function, and her colleague Rachel will ask the questions to us, and then we'll be able to answer them for you, or hopefully we will.
Hi Helen, yeah, we've got a question. Somebody's asked if the revision sessions during half term are mandatory.
Do you want to answer that one, Elaine?
To answer?
Yeah.
Okay. So no, they're not mandatory. Some students don't want to come in to revise in college. They'd prefer to do their revision at home, and that's absolutely fine. We accept that it's not for everybody.
We have another question here, which is, can students sit the exam on a different day?
In short, no. They're national exams, and the exams take place on the same date at the same time nationally. So we're not able to postpone the exam to a later time without sort of pre-awarding organisation authorisation. So the date and the time that we've communicated is the date and the time that the students need to attend. If they miss that date, then that's a whole paper towards their overall grade that will be missing. So it makes it very difficult for them to achieve the grade that they're aiming for. Would you add anything else, Elaine?
No, I think that's absolutely fine.
Brilliant, thank you. There's another one here. Which is the exam board for the maths exam?
So both exams, both English and maths, are AQA. So maths is AQA 8300 and English is AQA 8700.
We have another question.
Know that, well, sorry, the students will also know that where we've been doing lots of like past papers and past revision questions. So the language, the terminology, the students will be very used to that. They've been working, you know, on those AQA questions and papers throughout the whole of the resit programme this year.
Thank you, Helen. We have another question about the Dr. Frost app. Do the students have their own individual logins for Dr. Frost?
Yes, they do. And if they've lost their logins, then they need to contact their lecturer. If it's during the half term and they lose their login, if they can contact Tony Parry, he can reset their login and password.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So we've got another one. Somebody's asked what happens if the bus breaks down or there is an accident on the way to college, or what happens if the student is late?
That's a really good question, because it's inevitable that sometimes life does get in the way and things out of our control do happen. So the first thing I would say is not to worry and not to panic. I would suggest that they, you know, if they are on a bus and the bus has broken down or anything like's happened, then get them to contact with you first, so you can just reassure them and make a plan with them as to how they can get to college safely. Students can enter the exam up to 59 minutes after the exam has started. So if they are caught up in an accident or a bus delay or an incident, then they should still continue to make their way to college as safely as they can, and then on arrival they'll still be met and then taken to the exam. Sometimes we literally will be jogging across the court area with them in college to get them to the sports hall or the room they need to be, but as long as they can be within that room within 59 minutes of the exam starting, so a minute to 10, then they will still be able to sit the paper.
Thank you. And we have a question around results day. Will the results be emailed to us, or do the students need to pick them up?
Do you want me to answer that one?
Yeah, do you want to? Thanks, Elaine. We can tag team the answers.
So ordinarily, now we're post-pandemic, students come into the campus that they sat the exam on and collect their results. If students don't manage to get into college, all the exam results are then posted out in the afternoon. If you are away for the results day and you actually want them emailed to you, they just need to send an email to exams saying, please email our results out on the day. Anything to add, Helen?
No, I think that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Hi, Helen. So somebody else has asked what happens if their child is too ill to attend? What would happen to the grade?
Elaine, do you want to answer this one just to make sure it's accurate?
Yes, so in the past, when there were controlled assessments, if a student didn't attend either of the exams, then a grade was calculated. Unfortunately, now it's 100% exam. A student has to attend at least one of the exams to get a grade at the end. So if a student was ill for both exams in English or all 3 exams in maths, they wouldn't get a grade. What the exam board would advise is that they took the exam at the next earliest possibility, which is November. If they were ill for one of the exams, what the exam board would do is average out the performance across the 2 papers, taking into account the paper that they sat, and they would be awarded a grade on that basis.
Thank you, Elaine. We have a last question that it looks like is, what if students have forgotten their maths equipment or pens? What do they do?
Yeah, and inevitably some
Do you want me to answer that question? I think we've lost Helen for a second. So if they forget their maths equipment or pens or highlighters, we do have a station which is situated near the breakfast area where students can sign out maths equipment or just pens and highlighters for English. So there is somebody there from the English maths team who can sign out equipment for the students to use in the exam.
Thanks, Elaine. It cut me out in the middle of me talking. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Anything else that anybody? There were some great questions, by the way. Any other questions that anybody would like to ask?
I think that's all we've got through at the moment.
Okay, so what we'll do then is this session has been recorded, so this will be shared so that you'll be able to access it afterwards. And then if you do have any other questions, you'll have Elaine's email address, so please don't worry, always ask us. We'd much rather people ask us questions and we'd be able to answer them so that you and also, you know, our students have their peace of mind, because we want the very best for them. So thank you very much for your time joining us today. Hopefully you found it useful and helpful, and if you do have any other questions, we look forward to hearing from you then. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.